The preseason is finally behind us, and now we can look forward to real football, the regular season. On today's video, we're going to run through a Broncos 53-man roster projection following 3 preseason games. Let me just start by saying thank you, Sean Payton, for playing some, if not most, of the starters, at least in the first quarter of a lot of these preseason games. For the rest of the NFL, it's been a drag with all starters not playing, but at least Sean Payton gave us some quality quarter or two here and there. But let's jump into it, starting with the quarterback room. Bo Nix, Jarrett Stidham, and Zach Wilson. I believe the Broncos would keep all 3 quarterbacks. I don't think they're done with Jarrett Stidham just because he didn't win the quarterback battle. And I don't believe they traded for Zach Wilson just to move on from him 4 or 5 months later when he's looked really good the last 2 to 3 weeks. So I've got Denver keeping all 3 quarterbacks. You've got a rookie starter. I think it's in your best interest to have some good veteran support and a lot of experience in 2 backups to help get Nix ready every single week. So I'm going to have the Denver Broncos hold all 3 quarterbacks on their active 53-man roster. Now, speaking of Bo Nix, how many touchdowns for the rookie in 2024? Let's assume he starts all 17 games. Can he get to 20 touchdowns? 20, 22, 23? Let me know how many touchdowns you think number 10 is going to throw for in 2024. On to the running backs. I've got Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, and then fullback Michael Burton. I do not have Samaje Perine on there. I do not have UDFA Blake Watson. I feel like what we've seen out of Williams and McLaughlin and the rookie is enough encouraging stuff to believe that's a formidable running back trio that all have kind of a special talent to themselves. Like Jaleel McLaughlin has incredible speed and quickness and agility. Esteme's got some awesome burst at the short yardage situations and at the goal line. And then Javonte Williams is your well-rounded back that leans a little bit more into the bowling ball side of things. So I think the Broncos keep those 3 backs along with fullback Michael Burton, and the veteran Samaje Perine is released after a rocky preseason. Now on to the wide receivers. Last year, they only kept 4 wide receivers. So I've got 6, but I don't feel like they can move on from any of these 6 players. Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Josh Reynolds, Marvin Mims. Those 4 players are all locks to make the roster. Then you've got rookies Devaughn, Vele, and Troy Franklin. Vele has looked better than Troy Franklin so far in training camp in the preseason, so I don't see how they keep Franklin over Vele, but also Troy Franklin was a 4th-round draft pick of theirs that I don't see them moving on from, or at least putting him on the waiver wire for another team to claim and have him risk being snatched by someone else. So ultimately, I think Denver goes with 6 wide receivers. They'll probably try to get Lil Jordan Humphrey, Brandon Johnson, and a couple other these veteran guys they've had the last 2 to 3 years back on their practice squad. And maybe they do a little bit of taxing back and forth between the active roster and the practice squad early on. But those are the initial 6 players I've got on the 53-man. Tight ends, I'm only keeping 3. Adam Trotman, Greg Dulcich, and Lucas Kroll. Nate Atkins made the 53-man last year as a UDFA. I feel like Lucas Kroll has really impressed. Greg Dulcich has been able to stay healthy for the last 4 weeks, knock on wood. And Adam Trotman is this team's starting tight end. So for that reason, I think Denver only rolls with 3, especially with keeping 3 quarterbacks, which I think they're going to do. That means another room probably loses a player or 2, and in the tight end room, that could be Nate Atkins. As for the offensive line, you've got your 5 starters, Garrett Bowles, Ben Powers, Luke Wattenberg, Quinn Miners, and Mike McGlinchey. I think Matt Peart has emerged as the team's best left tackle or swing tackle. Cal Throckmorton, just an all-time name. How can you not keep him? Alex Forsythe is your backup center, and then Jacobs is going to be your backup right tackle. You could twist my arm and put Alex Palchevsky in that spot instead of Jacobs, but ultimately I'll go with those 9 offensive linemen. Now, before we look at the defense, and who I think Sean and George Payton are going to keep on that half of the football, let me tell everyone watching about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. I'm talking turning $10 into $1,000 with as little as 4 correct picks. Now, let me give you my selections for NFL Week 1. Call me crazy. I like the more on Caleb Williams at 0.5 passing yards. Got a good feeling about that one. I also like the less on Isaiah Pacheco's rushing yards against a good Ravens defense. Give me the more on Justin Tucker at 1.5 field goals. And I like the more on Drake London's receiving yards at 65.5, as he is now Kirk Cousins' #1 target. So if you like my selections, download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. If you like my selections a lot, $20 turns into $200 with those 4 selections. So download the app today, use Prize Picks, because pick more, pick less. It's that easy at Prize Picks. Defensive line, Zach Allen, DJ Jones, John Franklin Myers, locks to make the roster, along with Malcolm Roach. After that, it's a little bit up in the air. I'm going to keep Matt Henningsen, a day 3 pick out of Wisconsin not too long ago, and then the recently reinstated defensive tackle Ioma Wazurike out of Iowa State, who missed all of 2023. He's impressed so far in training camp, so I think he'll find a roster spot. I wouldn't be shocked if Denver releases him and then tries to get him through the waiver wire and puts him on the practice squad so they can hold on to a guy like Angelo Blackson. Although, now that I think about it out loud, Blackson, he's not going to be subject to the waiver wire. He's played enough seasons where he's just an outright free agent. So a lot of times, we saw this with Mike Purcell in the past, like the Broncos release a veteran player and just say, hey, don't go anywhere. Tomorrow, we're going to make some roster moves, place guys on injured reserve, open up a roster spot, and we'll sign you back after that. So I could see that happening with a guy like Blackson. As for the linebackers, Jonathan Cooper, Alex Singleton, Cody Barton, Baron Browning, those 4 are your starters and your locks, of course. Nick Bonito and Jonah Elliss at outside linebacker. Thomas Nkoum continues to impress. I feel like he's going to get a 53-man roster spot, because if he doesn't, I don't know if he'll make it to your practice squad. And then a backup inside linebacker, I went with Justin Stranad and Jonas Griffith. I could have gone with Bailey. He's really good on special teams, but ultimately these are the 9 guys I selected. Drew Sanders will remain on the PUP list, so he is out for a minimum of 4 games. However, he does not count towards your 53-man roster. Now, before we look at, I think the next one up would be cornerbacks here. I do want to ask you guys to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you are not already. We're closing in on 25,000 subscribers, so join one of the fastest and one of the largest growing Broncos YouTube communities out there today and get yourself the best free Broncos content all 2024 season long. Cornerbacks, Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, Jaquan McMillan. I believe those are your 3 Week 1 starters. I'm going to hold on to Levi Wallace. The veteran has been injured for much of camp. Maybe they release him and say, hey, we're going to sign you back to our practice squad tomorrow. Don't go anywhere. Damari Mathis could be a surprise cut candidate for sure. Would not be shocked if he's not on it, but for now, I'll put him on it. And then finally, Kris Abrams-Draine, I feel like is going to be your backup slot nickel corner behind McMillan. And then finally, your safeties. Brandon Jones, PJ Locke, those are your 2 starters. I'm going to go with Smith. He's been so good this preseason that if the Broncos cut him, I don't see a world in which he is not claimed by someone on the waiver wire, and there's no way he makes it all the way to Denver's practice squad. And then J.L. Skinner, a day 3 pick out of Boise State last year. I'm going to put him on. I'll also keep Delaren Turner-Yell on the PUP list. I don't like not putting Devaughn Key on there, but I simply ran out of spots because now we get to numbers 51, 52, and 53 on the roster. Punter Riley Dixon, he wins the battle over Trenton Gill, Will Lutz, and then Mitchell Fraboni. That's your long snapper, and that's your 53-man roster. So grade the Broncos roster for me. Scale it on a 1 to 100 scale. I believe the #1 team in Madden this year was the Chiefs and the 49ers at 92. So use that as a point of reference. I'll give the Broncos a 80. I think they're in that B- category. They may not have a ton of great depth at some positions, but they've got some firepower for sure. So give me an 80 for the Broncos. Let me know what your grade is or your number down below in the comment section. All right, that's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will sign off and see you all tomorrow.